I mean, it was kind of day to day. Some days I did, other days it was annoying. I think one of the things I didn't really like was how I didn't go out in the world. It was all one location. So if we did homework, it was like with a group of people, um, with like a leader. They call them staff. Um, and I really didn't learn like the normal skills that you would need like in real life because we never needed. I mean, they were set up to where, I mean, once a week I was getting like a class. Once a week I was meeting up with a therapist. Once a month I would meet up with a med doctor. I would go to normal, like, middle school, high school at the same location. And then what they call a cottage, which is like a group home involved as well, all at one location. So I did that. Um, I mean, it wasn't really worth really staying there at the location because they really don't help with anything. Like the staff are just there, like, and then you're handling everything as if you're already an adult, which kind of. I lived at the Tennyson Center for like a year and a half. It was like basic, so like third grade math, fourth grade science, like the normal, you know. On weekends, they would do field trips on Saturday and Sunday. Um, and I mean, that is like normal stuff that you would do like in school. So it would be like going up to the mountains and hiking for 2 hours. There would be going to like the Denver Zoo or the Denver Aquarium. But I mean, after you do all of that, there's not much else you can really do. So it got boring real quick. After like a good 2 weeks, because we were like doing the same stuff, which is part of the reason why I don't like. If you know like what day program stuff is, it's like where if you don't have a job and you're in like disability services, you can like a group of people and just do fun things. The reason why I don't do that anymore is because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I would rather have a job. I would rather do my music or do what I'm doing now and actually talk with new people rather than the same thing every single day. Yeah. One of my teachers I was doing so successful with that they literally, I worked with her for like a full 2 years. So when I left after a year and a half, and I was living with my grandmother in foster care at the time, and I was going to school there still. So during the day, I would go to school at the school portion. I was doing so well with her that they literally put me there in class, even though it was the wrong grade. They were actually like, she was willing to up my grade and give me the right type of economics or mathematics or history that, like, basically she would be teaching like multiple grades, which is like a phenomenal teacher if you could do something like that. Yeah, I mean, she was the type of person, I'm pretty sure you've seen people in like the Reddit, the Daniel Larson Reddit, which is run by fans. It's not run by me, but it's run by fans. I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of comments. I have, but it's like Daniel Larson is always with somebody, never alone in school. She, has to have somebody follow him around. That is not because I, wasn't capable. It was literally the type of friendship that we had with me and the teacher. So it was like during the day, we would just go everywhere together, which is, I mean, like a friendship that couldn't be broken. It was like, that is how well I got along with people. Yes, there was one teacher that I literally couldn't even stand in class. It was like he was a history teacher, and I just didn't like him at all because it would be like I would walk into the class, right, and I'm a happy guy. I'm very talkative, and his attitude would be like, "Okay, class, sit down." It would seem like he's got his own mental health issues, and he shouldn't be working at a mental health place, right? He definitely had a short temper, and I mean, he was there the entire time I was there, which was surprisingly enough, because he was, from what the entire school was, a hated teacher in the school, and I mean, he kick out half the students by the time the class ended. So it's yeah. I was like literally one of them that he actually told me to just leave his class. And yeah, like literally. And it's like, why would it even do that? When I try to speak up about it, because I go to school there as my own mentally health, right? My mental health issues. Of course, they try to be a client, student. So it was like his real concerns weren't actually being heard. And I actually found out that the Tennyson Center closed and are no longer in service, which I actually cried about a month ago that they have been shut down. So I don't know why they shut down, but I was told that they were a company that was just, locally owned, really, really good company that just hired the wrong people, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the way he would teach the class was like as if it was like, so our classes were like 45 minutes long. And it was like the normal classes that you would get in like a normal school. So it was like a normal day where you would go to class A, you would move to class B, things like that. So you wouldn't have the same teacher. The bad thing about, I didn't like the way he was teaching it because I would go into his class, we would start maybe after 10 minutes, right? So we really only have 30 minutes left of class, and he would just be, like he acted like everything was not his job. Like he would give you your paperwork and he would expect you to teach yourself.
So I guess
So, I mean, I don't think we really clashed or anything. Um, I think it was just like I would go to class with memories of like the day previously. I would be in a bad mood, he would already be in a bad mood. You know what I'm saying? And those two bad moods would not really work. So what would happen was I would do anything I could just to get out of the class. And then his response was, "Don't even come to my class," which, well, what am I supposed to do? Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I had kind of crazy to say this, but I literally had two. I had about three friends, really close friends, and what I remember is like, you're welcome. Um, I remember just like them being a lot smarter than me at the time. So they were probably like three of the smartest kids in the entire school. So for me to be hanging out with them and to get along great made me feel like I was, it made me feel like I was higher ranked than the rest of the school. I comes with its own good side and bad side sometimes. Because I felt like by doing that, I literally had power over the school. Hanging out with the three best kids of the school, including me, I just gained, like everyone else really kind of hated me at that point. Um, I was probably one of the most bullied in the school. Yeah, so on the Disney Channel, I think it was, there was a TV show called Danny Phantom. Um, so like one of the things that everyone would do is they would mimic, as a way of hating on me, calling me Danny Phantom. Like, hey, Danny Phantom, and actually say it like that to on purpose piss me off. Say that, call me by my regular name, and I mean, it was like going viral in the school. So I was screwed, basically. That became like one of the biggest things in school. You called me Danny Phantom, you were basically a bully. Um, Kind of like Quacko. If you say the word Quacko in my Daniel Larson fan base, you're a troll. It's kind of like that. Um, but yeah, that was one of the big things that happened. With that, I was on the school bus, um, getting bullied to the point that I would sit all the way in the back of the school bus, and anybody that sat back there with me would literally like actually try to hit me because, I mean, I guess there's nothing that you could really do on a school bus. The driver of the school bus is just driving, so if there was a fight on the bus, the fight would just happen. I would, like every single day after about a mile of after we leave the school bus would pull over along the side of the road and call the police every single day. So there were days to where I was actually like 5 hours delayed on the bus and didn't get home until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, which is not. And the school gets out at like 2:30, so for me to get home after dinner, and then it's like, well, what are we doing for dinner? Is kind of jacked up. It was a very, very violent place. And then, I mean, they had one room, I guess, to where it's like a brick room. they call it. Um, and it had a window, so I guess if somebody breaks the window, then I guess they call the police. I never did that. I never broke a window. I never broke a door or anything like that. But supposedly the school had what they call timeout rooms. Um, and I was like always, I was always thrown in the timeout rooms for like crying, like obsessive crying, or not like stupid things like not cooperating with the teacher. I was put, but other clients, like other students, like would actually like go into the room, and the staff are trained to do like physical restraints to where I mean they cross your arms, and you've probably seen people do this. Seen it to where like they have to get like four staff that their jobs are to watch over those rooms. And I've seen it to where they've had to get four staff on one person. And their job is to, because it's a special ed school, their job is to try to stop the police from intervening. So they try their hardest not to call the police. So if it takes five staff to calm somebody down in a full 2 to 3 hours to do so, they will try to do that. Which is crazy. And I've seen it to where it's that bad and they actually lock down the schools. So they like literally say, okay, we're not going out for recess right now because there's an incident outside. So they do recess for the entire school in the gym. I mean, it was that type of environment. And I mean, I didn't like it because I felt like I didn't even fit in. Because I was hanging out with, I mean, in a school like that, two of the probably most well behaved people in the school just doesn't feel right. Yeah. So I met Bob. There was once a week, there was a class, I would call it, or a club called Reading Buddies. And it's like an hour to where you would go, right, into the school library, and you would be paired up with what they call a reading buddy. And Bob was one of the people that was one of the options of people that I could choose from to be my reading buddy. And it just so happened that Bob and I were chosen to be together for reading buddies, and we hit it off so well that I mean the person that was in charge of reading buddies, like the lead board, basically of the Tennyson Center, literally said that they don't see an issue of us continuing on our friendship, and it's lasted to this day. And literally the day he goes up to heaven. Can't be broken. So at the time, I wasn't with my grandma, right? Because my brother lived in California. That I was up for custody at the Tennyson Center. Then my grandmother, my mother, my biological mother, and my dad all came into a lawsuit, right? Of who wants custody type of thing, right? My grandmother, uh, Nancy was her name. She decided to move to Colorado for the time being during the, I guess you would call it court case, lawsuit, custody hearing, whatever. And my grandmother had two options: to go back to California or to stay here in Colorado. My grandmother made the decision that since I lived in Colorado at the time, to just stay here in Colorado, right? And so my grandmother won the custody case. And at that time, I was still staying at the Tennyson Center in and out of foster care during the custody stuff. And then during that time, I mean, I kind of did, what I wasn't supposed to do. But I mean, if you don't do something like that, you don't always grow, right? Sometimes you do something, cross the line a little bit. So I told Bob about my grandmother at the time. And I was like, I know this is not okay. I don't remember what I said, but I literally said if there's a way that we could stay in communication, that would be great. And it just so happened that it worked out. It was like a friendship, a little bit. Yeah, the board games in my bedroom, which I don't always play anymore because I don't have anybody to play it with. Uh, because Bob is like getting older. I mean, we could still probably play it, but it's not the same anymore. Because it's not like, I mean, here and there it's okay. You know what I mean? The same. It would be more closer to my age. Um, Bob and I would, play board games. So we definitely, all three of us had that type of friendship together. Well, I want to say that it was very boring. It was a lot of the same stuff that Tennyson Center kind of was. It was, I wake up in the morning, right? And instead of going to the Tennyson Center, I would go to like a day program. And that would be 5 days a week. And like I said, it would be things like going to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, or the Denver Zoo, or going to a park. Um, Maybe go hiking in the mountains of Denver, Colorado, right? Pretty much just said all the options just right there, right? So, I mean, once doing that 5 days a week for a year, let alone, over and over and over again, just gets super, super tiring. And it's, you end up not liking going to the Denver Zoo, not even, with your own family. You've seen so many times that it's like, okay, what am I going to actually see here? Like, if you don't have a purpose to go there, it's not the same. Uh, and so it's probably one of the biggest things that I didn't like. As far as my life, the provider, right, or whoever I was staying with, right? I mean, it was like I didn't fit in because it was like I I know this sounds crazy for me to say, but like right now I'm speaking very, very fine, right? Speaking with speaking like, and I know what I'm talking. People try to say that I have autism, and I don't always think that it's autism. I sometimes think that it's like post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic like abuse, neglect because of what I've been through. We have to remember that, right? Right. So sometimes I feel like I panic at times that I shouldn't. And if no one around me knows like what I need or communicates well with me, then it doesn't help at all. It turns into arguments. Yes, because my mother and my dad, I guess, I'm not fully sure of their story because I was never told anything and it was kind of like a family secret. So it's something that I don't even know to this day. It's like a big mystery to me. But I guess my mother and my father were in a divorce or something like that. Okay. Or they were never even married to begin with. I don't know. But my dad still lived in California. Well, I was living with my mother in Colorado, right? And social services, I guess, is what put me into the Tennyson Center when they found out about the abuse. So it was really, in the end, it was a legal battle between am I safe enough to go back to my mother or should I be put up for custody, which I think my dad tried, or my grandmother, one of the two, wanted me up for custody. And they were speaking up about it at the time, right? About my mother. And so what that ended up happening was my dad got involved and was like, come live with me in California. And then my grandmother was like, Daniel doesn't even know his dad. I know Daniel a lot more because I'm was one of the closest people to him when he lived in California. My grandmother got involved, right? As far as the court, they were trying to figure out who would be the best fit for me, my dad or my grandmother. So my grandmother moved to Colorado and said that my grandmother would stay here in Colorado because I'm used to Colorado after a year and a half, right? Then my grandmother, the court basically said easy win. And tries to say to this day that like your grandmother's a bitch because she won you over just the fact that she had money. She didn't actually raise you well because if she would have raised you well, she would have taught you right from wrong. She would have taught you skills. And it was like, well, I mean, my dad is right, but I mean, I can't blame my grandmother for that because I didn't know my dad that much, right? So I feel like everybody has their own feelings, and it is what it is. I that I could get to my father, um, just like I want to get closer to my mother because the entire situation is just screwed. It's, situation. I really want to get closer to them. But now that I am, I mean, it's easy enough to say now 1 billion views, and I am only growing more and more and more. I get spotted in public on a daily basis. Not everyone wants to be affiliated in that, and that's now a new struggle that I have to get over. Um, and I'm slowly losing Bob because of my popularity. Like Bob is paranoid sometimes of being in public, so it's enjoy it while you can. But yeah, that's what's going on in my life. He was on my mother's. I know a lot about my mother, um, very much, but supposedly my grandmother was in I don't want to say social services herself, like a case manager, caseworker, but I think she was something like that. And she kept talking a lot about like how she was like when a baby's put up for adoption, she was always the one that had to drive the babies to, you know what I mean, to their foster care or whatever. All I know is that my mother at a young age was put up for adoption. Okay. And my grandmother, Nancy, right, adopted my mother. So my mother never really knew her mother, right? So that's where my mother's, I guess, trauma came from. My mother with my dad, I don't, like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, or if I'm getting, because that's what it is now. They, my mother, from my understanding, had me at a young age to where she wasn't financially ready, she wasn't mentally ready. So when that happened, my mother didn't know how to take care of me. Let's just say it that way. Uh, so that created trauma in the family. And I don't blame, you know, my mother for that. I don't blame anyone for that. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be alive because I wouldn't be here otherwise, right? And I feel like my job in this world is to do, I feel like everybody should do what makes them happy. That's how I feel. We're
That's
all in this world for a reason, and if we don't make the best of it, we're just going to die unhappy, and that's not how any of us want to live. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot, where I currently live. Um, I mean, the only thing I really want to say that is kind of a trauma. I don't want to say trauma because it's not really traumatizing me, but what I want to say is like my grandmother was a type of person that put me into performing at a young age. Even when I lived in California before I even moved to Colorado and got put in the Tennyson Center. So I was always somebody that loved to travel because my grandmother traveled and I loved performing. Being in services and being where I am now, I really, really miss the traveling. I miss going places. And I really miss performing, which is why I became a singer. Um, because I don't care if I'm good or not, as long as somebody thinks that I'm doing something for this world. That's all that matters to me. I will put out much content, even if I am literally the most hated person, as long as I'm happy, and as long as I made at least one person happy, that's all that matters. Yes, I do.